Hey guys, it's NPC here, and welcome to my guide on... If you like what you see here, please press that subscribe button, and let's get on to the video. Chesed is a multi-phase boss fight where you'll have to kill a bunch of trash mobs until you get into the boss's chamber. As you can see here, this is the first encounter. If you look up top, you will see the amount of waves and as well as the amount of enemies required in order to move on to the next chamber. The first two waves aren't that difficult, and they're clumped up pretty nicely. So a couple of AoEs should help you proceed to the next stage. Moving on to the second chamber, you will notice two turrets spawn and an initial wave of enemies. On the second wave, a Goliath spawns alongside two turrets and more trash mobs. You'll have to clear both of these waves to move on to the final chamber where the boss is. In the final chamber, you'll have to take down 4 waves of enemies before the boss opens up. I recommend that you save your cost right before you finish the 4th wave, so that when the boss opens up, you can burst it down. Failing to do so will cause the boss to again spawn more waves of enemies, and the whole process repeats. You kill 4 waves, the boss opens up, and you burst it down. Alright, so now that you have seen the fight, let's talk about some of the characters that will be decent. I'm gonna ignore most of the healers. If you need a healer, you know who to pick. Starting off, Hina. I think Hina, if you're gonna use her, will be a trash slayer. Overall, a bit expensive to kill trash, right? But if for some reason you don't have any penetration damage, and you have to rely on explosion damage, Hina will be a trash slayer. Mutsuki is probably just an overall character. Her mines are really nice if you can land them, but I don't know if you can land them in this fight. Maybe in the boss wave you might be able to. But the early waves, she's going to be okay, but her EX skill is really strong. For Saya, I mean, ideally Trash Slayer, but probably just okay. Right? She's like there. You can use her, I guess. For Shiroko, she's going to be like, she's probably going to be good overall. I like that her EX is 2 cost, and that once it kills a mob, it moves on to another one, so it's like a really bad AoE. But it's 2 cost, why not, right? So if you have her, you can use her, it's not that bad. For Yuka, she's kind of just there. Personally, I wouldn't use her. But if for some reason you need a tank, and for some reason you're not using Tsubaki, you could use Yuka. I mean, she's okay. Hibiki's gonna be broken as heck. Her AoE is really strong. She's got that great crit damage passive for all your allies. Next up we have Koltana. She's just good overall. Free attack passive and an attack buff. If you need help killing the boss, having Koltana might be really useful. Iori's gonna be good overall, but she's more of a boss slayer in my opinion. Her AoE is nice because it can cleave some of the mobs in the back, but there's very specific patterns where you can use that. So she's not great for the whole fight, but she's great in like certain instances of the fight. Hasumi, if you're gonna use her, just a boss slayer. Her kit's really interesting, but that's about it. Next up we have Neru. Although she is pretty decent at slaying the boss, I think she's just okay. Her affinity is not boosted for the fight, so she's going to be a little bit weaker. But being a 2 cost, she cycles really fast. You can use her for pretty much anything, but she's not that great, I guess. Especially because she's a front and her defensive abilities are really low. Next up we got Momoy, who is honestly good overall, but I think she's more of a boss slayer. Her EX ability is really good at just dealing a ton of damage to the boss. But her EX can also target multiple enemies, and she also has a heal. So she's very useful, but I think she's more focused on the boss. Same with Karen, who's just a boss slayer. You really want to use her EX on the boss, and Karen's EX you can also use on just like the big mobs like the Goliaths, if you really need to. But ideally, specifically the boss is why she's there. Kind of the same for Maki and Tina. You're really just using them to hit the boss. They're strong, but because they're not going to be boosted, they're going to be kind of weak at the same time, right? They're not going to be as strong as like a Karen or an Iori, but they will be pretty good. Mashiro, if you have no other sources of damage and you need that extra bit of damage, you can use Mashiro. Her normal skill is really good at clearing trash, so you might want to use her for that, but that's about it. Kind of the same for Aru. She's really just good at killing trash. Right now for global, Aru is not really that great at total assault, but she will shine in the future. Sumire is going to be a trash slayer too. She's got a really good AoE. It's a frontal count, but it's pretty cheap, and she's actually really strong. Same with Tsurugi. Augmented with her EX ability, she starts shooting in an AoE. And if you have a decent amount of levels on her sub-skill, she gets a free reload after she kills an enemy. What it essentially does is it gives her multiple shots of her EX ability. Momoy is definitely a trash slayer too. Her EX ability is a really big AoE cone that's really fast, and it's only 3 costs. She is super efficient at what she does. Yoshimi is, even though I used her, she's okay. Her damage is kind of weak, but if you really need extra AoE damage, you could use her. She's actually not that bad. Hoshino is pretty strong, but she's also pretty much just a trash slayer. Maybe she's good overall, because she is a tank, and she does heal herself, and she does make a shield for herself. So maybe I'll put her up here. She's pretty good. Hifumi is gonna be just a trash slayer. You really don't want to be using her skill on the boss, and her Peroro taunt is kinda nice to have. Nonomi is basically the queen of AoE. The issue with Nonomi is that when you're using her EX ability, sometimes she stays so far in the back that you can't actually hit the mobs. So in those cases, you might want to consider bringing Serena with you. Junko is also a trash slayer. She's actually really good at certain... Actually no, Junko's probably better overall. She's really good at certain mob patterns, but her EX skill is also pretty strong on the boss, so she's pretty good if you have her. Akari's specifically just going to be for killing trash. If you get double buffs on her, that requires her to be 3-star, of course. She's able to probably one-shot most of the trash. Probably not the Goliaths, and maybe not the turrets, but she might be useful. Tsurugi is just, if you really need to, if the Goliaths somehow get their abilities off or something, maybe a big ability comes off, you can use her. Ideally, you probably don't need her. Like tanks, specifically Yuka and Tsubaki, you don't really need for this fight. Akane is kind of nowhere. Like, she's probably good overall, but it's only because of her defense down. She doesn't really do much damage, so if you're running Akane, you want like pretty good AoE. But yeah, that's about it for Akane. The last character, my favorite character, Shun, she's okay. Her being explosion damage means she will do damage on the fight, but she's mainly there because of her normal skill. And even then, because of how the fight works, it's not really that needed to have extra cost. So those are the characters I recommend for the boss fight. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.